At 12:46, Air Force One departs for Washington, D.C. And at 3 o'clock, President Johnson asked one of his aides to call Rose Kennedy, the president's mother. This was a conversation. Lyndon Johnson, Mrs. Kennedy, Rose Kennedy. Yes, Mr. President, she says to him. Yes, Mr. President. Lyndon Johnson says, I wish to God there was something I could do, and I want to tell you that we're grieving with you. Rose Kennedy says, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know you loved Jack and he loved you. President Johnson became so emotional he had to give the telephone to his wife, Lady Bird Johnson, who said to Mrs. Kennedy, we are glad that the nation had your son as long as it did. Rose Kennedy responded by saying, yes, well, thank you, Lady Bird. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And Lady Bird finishes the conversation by saying, love and prayers to all of you. Well, at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Air Force One landed at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. Robert Kennedy immediately met Air Force One when the aircraft landed. The Attorney General boarded the jet and immediately pushed his way to the back of the plane where Jackie was seated. He actually pushed right by the new President Lyndon Johnson and didn't even look up to acknowledge him. It was Johnson's plan that he and Mrs. Kennedy would exit the aircraft together with the body of the slain president. Robert Kennedy was having no part of that, a snub that President Johnson would soon not forget. A lift truck edged to the open door of the aircraft, and the bronze casket carrying the body of President Kennedy was unloaded. The president's casket was placed in an ambulance, and along with Robert and Jackie Kennedy was taken to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where they performed the autopsy. Bethesda Naval Hospital was chosen for the autopsy because President Kennedy had been a naval officer, and it was his official hospital during his presidency. President Johnson left the aircraft a little bit bewildered after the Kennedys had departed for Bethesda. He had Lady Bird and his entourage at his side, and at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Lyndon Johnson gave his first public speech as President of the United States, saying, "This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask your help and God's." Meanwhile, back aboard Air Force One, Flight Steward John Hames had the responsibility of collecting all of President Kennedy's effects and removing them from the aircraft, putting them in several boxes, and sending them to the White House. So that's kind of the story there. Okay? What's going to happen next? What are we going to talk about next? Oswald's arrest and his interrogation, which is an incredible story within itself. So I'm going to show you a few videos here I think you'll enjoy on what we just talked about. The first one is called Capturing Oswald. And I've split it in half to what we talked about. And this was choreographed and done by Jim Lavelle, who was the man that was handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald when he was shot, which we'll get to. It was done by his granddaughter. And all the police officers that were there during this time we've just talked about will give you their perspective on that. Okay? So we'll watch that. I think you'll enjoy it. Then I got a couple other things to show you that I think you'll enjoy. I hope you like these videos. My voice is getting to the point where it's time.